All right, Sly and the Family Stone. Thank you for allowing me to be myself. Thank you for letting me be myself. Sorry about that. Welcome back from the break, everybody. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And my guest today is the head of the Division of Adult Continuing Education, Vice President Sunil Gupta. Welcome, VP Gupta.
Thank you so much, Hugo. Please call me Sunil.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I will. That'll help you feel a little more comfortable too, right?
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the format before the show. I wanted to give you an opportunity, since you are new to the college, to kind of introduce yourself by telling us a little bit about your background. You know, where you're from, your studies, things like that.
Sure, absolutely. So, born and raised in Queens, New York City. I grew up in the neighborhood of Regal Park and then moved to Corona, Queens. Uh, Spent much of my formative years in Corona, Jackson Heights, all that area. Went to college locally at St. John's, and then started my first professional career working at Queensborough Community College at a young age of 22 or so. Moved on after a few years from there, worked in downtown Brooklyn, New York Polytech, there working on the academic affairs side, working primarily with the students in graduate studies, online learning programs, building out that. Had the wonderful opportunity to also work with the borough president in Brooklyn, working with employment opportunities for the dislocated workers and unemployed adult males that were living in that area. This is prior to the commercial development of downtown Brooklyn. So this was all at the time before the Ratner Development Corporation came in and built out the Barclays Arena. There was a lot of eminent domain that was being done. And in that environment, I really got my first taste of working with workforce development, which I really enjoyed. It was a big passion for mine. And then Polytech merged with NYU. And at that point, I found my kind of my hunger and my desire to be in workforce development. This is many years ago before I had all this gray hair. Uh, then I was so fortunate to be nominated for a position at Borough of Manhattan Community College. And then I was there as their Dean of Adult Continuing Ed and Workforce Development for 14 years, in which we built up that division, and we moved off campus to a standalone facility by Wall Street. And we've been able to grow that initiative primarily through contract training, tuition, grants funded program, partnerships with community-based organizations, and really developing a lot of our stackable credential programs with the academic affairs division of the college, and also with multiple non-credit to credit programs with the CT high schools. And then again, I was fortunate and very fortunate again to have an opportunity to be selected to be the vice president at LaGuardia. And I've been here now. This is about my ninth week at LaGuardia, and I've enjoyed it. And I've been coming on campus maybe every other week to my offices and just trying to get grounded with the campus and and the location. And it was wonderful prior week when I saw students for the first time on the campus.
Well, folks that were taking advantage of the labs, the
Yes.
physical labs. I didn't get when you talked about your studies. What did you get your degrees in?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. So my undergraduate degree was in business and finance at St. John's. My master's degree was in management of technology at Polytech. I went there while I worked. So I went to school at night as a student, and I worked in the day as an employee. And then my doctorate, which I just completed, all my coursework is at St. John's in education, higher education. And so I'm just about submitting my dissertation. I'm in the dissertation phase of that at St. John's.
Right. So you were mentioning at Polytech that you were already working with online education as part of the package.
That was so we launched their first online graduate studies program back then, and that was primarily for students that were seeking advanced degrees. Many of the students were overseas. Some of them were in Europe, some were in Asia, and some in certainly locally, regionally. And that was when the accreditation was just starting to start in that burgeoning area of online master degree programs. So we learned a lot. We were able to grow that division, and it was very successful. And again, different type of students. I mean, though there were certainly many immigrant students who had come to this country at Polytech in Brooklyn. They were already had secured their undergraduate degree, so they were master degree students. So a different level, and certainly wonderful to work with. But I think the real engagement and the part of my passion that I enjoy is working with students for whom their first interaction with college may be through non-credit programming, and it has the potential to really change the trajectory for them and their families and their lifetime income by pursuing an associate's degree.
Why? I mean, why do you think that became your passion in a sense?
It's interesting. I don't know if it's a combination of something that is also rewarding to me. It's very fulfilling, and maybe just it speaks more about what I need to complete myself as an individual, is that sort of feedback where you're working to support and provide opportunities to those who may not have the same ones. And I also see myself in many of the students over the years that we've served, first generation born and raised here, but many of our students are similar, and I see that and giving them an opportunity to gain that kind of cultural ability to understand how to navigate in a very confusing bureaucratic environment, which is higher ed, by its nature, something that hasn't changed in over 200 years. And for many reasons, it's that kind of there is a certain path in which, if you are not a student who is familiar with it, or you're a first generation student to college, you may not know how to advocate for yourself, or you may not know how to apply for funding, sponsored programs, grant funded programs, all of these type of things, which is very tricky.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about you identify with the student body, so do I. I mean, I had President Adams on the show, and I told him like the first time I ever took a photography class was in as an adult continuing education student at my local community college. I had flunked out of art school, but because I didn't, the school I'd chosen had a commercial bent, even though they had sworn they had a fine arts aspect. I just was not interested in designing business cards for the rest of my life, which is what it looked like I was heading for. And found myself in the restaurant business,
Mhm.
and I didn't, which was fun. It's fun when you're an late adolescent, but it, it's not a lot of fun after
Mhm.
a little while. And uh, but I had bought some camera equipment, and I got interested in, I had a friend who said, like, let's learn how to work in a photo, like a lab, like print our own stuff. And we took a adult continuing education, and I was in the lab that I would eventually come back to for the 2-year degree.
Wow.
And it wasn't, nobody was shepherding me into it. It's just kind of like, just kind of worked out that way. But because I was familiar with the space, it didn't seem like it did,
Mhm.
I think at that point I was in journalism, and I was looking at, you know, uh, illustrating my own stories.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe I should take a photography class. And there I was back in the same lab again. So again, identify. And I think, when you were talking a little bit, I also, this idea that as a first generation, uh, American, whatever, like, again, my parents were exiles, came to the United States from Cuba. Even though my sister had gone to college and my mother had a
Mhm.
degree, nobody ever sat me down and said, Hugo, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
You fill out these forms, and you fill out the FAFSA. And, so again, my first experience with the college would have been in this, I want to learn how to do this one thing. You talked about, when you were at BMCC, what were some of the lessons you learned in those 14 years of running that space? I mean, some successes and ideas.
Well, I mean, so one of the most important things that I learned was how to kind of engage with working with credit students, and they're no different. I mean, the socioeconomic income was about same. The family level of education was the same. It's just that the non-credit students were yet to take that step to become credit students. And the biggest most helpful thing for me was working very, very closely, both with the provost and all the department chairs, and it was a wonderful learning experience over the years in which um, we found ways in which we connected, almost like a meshed network, where if we had funding on occasion, it would be also to support initiatives for graduating, matriculating seniors by providing them with non-credential certifications that would help them in their portfolio, and then working with the faculty to help us design non-credit courses that made sense, and so then that led to combining industry advisory boards where certain departments, based on their nature or for Perkins reporting requirements with NYSED, need to maintain an advisory board of industry. And some of them were a little bit less active and some were very active. And we said, why don't we work together? And we combined those in technology, allied health, and business. And then those were combined advisory boards that we would take the burden of convening and working, but it belonged to the entire college. And it was a wonderful kind of learning environment where the industry, government agencies, CBO partners, our faculty chairs, career services, and the provost would attend quarterly. And it really became a opportunity for identifying new funding sources, applying for grants, and then identifying where there were changes in the industry that we were not aware of as an institution, things that were coming around the bend.
So it becomes obvious to me, or I'm getting an idea of why President Adams would like to bring you in, since he talks a lot about the one house vision for the college, this kind of dovetailing of adult and continuing education with the degree seeking programs. My question to you would be, though, okay, so you're 14 years at BMCC and you've got these successes. Why LaGuardia? Is this I promised no gotcha questions, but
No,
I'll soft pedal it. You can feel free to say, well,
that's an excellent question, and that was part of I will say I was not. I mean, in the middle of COVID, I was not actively searching at that point, and as a dean, I was reporting directly to the president in those 14 years. So, and I had a wonderful and still amazing team, and it was an opportunity to make certainly a personal change, a professional change, but more to make a systems change on a larger scale. LaGuardia's got a much larger base to implement and make impact for adult workers, and being part of the Queens diaspora, I felt a real deep connection to that, and it was a soul search for me. And I said, if I'm going to make this change and I'm going to make some impact, I would want to do it at LaGuardia. Their enrollments for non-credit students, obviously prior to COVID, were about almost double what we were doing at BMCC in non-credit programs. At that point, we were about 10,000 students in the non-credit side. And so there was this opportunity, and also with the vision of President Adams, who understands, how we could make change. It gave me another opportunity in which I could kind of thread the needle and be a part of a bigger image for this institution, and hopefully for CUNY, and obviously for Queens. So it was a tough decision, but one I'm very glad to make. And if not now, when? I mean, this is when the borough needs as much support and as much programming, and there were a wonderful amount of talent at LaGuardia. I mean, I know through my interactions when my colleague and dear colleague Jane Schulman was the VP, when I was the kind of the new kid on the block, I had met with her, and she was very kind enough to kind of share her insight with me. I've had a great impression of LaGuardia and the kind of impact it does to the community. So again, if this was a special opportunity that I felt if I didn't seize it at this moment, I wouldn't have made a change.
The president, when he came in, he did his listening tour, and a lot of that is just to try to see how the place runs, strengths, weaknesses, whatever you want to call this, the SWOT, right? Yeah. Opportunities, threats, whatever. Obviously, I'm sure you did. Like you said, you knew Jane Schulman before VP Schulman, before you came here. But just coming from the outside, what your summation of the program as you found it coming in?
So yeah, definitely. I mean, also I would say I'm still in the middle of my listening tour, but with the team and the division, I have certainly met with many of them. and meet weekly with them. So I would say it's probably the most unified group of talented individuals in adult workforce in CUNY in one institution that I've ever seen. It's a very deep bench, very, very knowledgeable, lots of experience, lots of understanding, lots of contacts. Um, and I think that, to be fair, there is a need, and with all groups, to have some kind of consistent leadership and a consistent mission and vision for the area. And through no fault of their own, and through the unfortunate impact of COVID, has created real challenges for the division. So I think the skill, talent is there, the knowledge is there. I think COVID's impact on CUNY as a whole has really hampered many institutions, and I think for LaGuardia, it's also hampered and impacted our adult learning populations because they're impacted doubly. Not only have they been impacted by potential inequitable numbers of unemployment, layoffs, lack of ability to cover their household income obligations, but there are also no clear signals from the city and state at any point that there's going to be a recovery. It's starting to eke out, and knock on wood, it looks positive. But even the employer partners that are hiring our students and our communities in hospitality and all these other areas, they're not quite clear how they're going to come out of this. And so the evergreen areas are where the focus needs to be. And the division subsequently, my long-winded answer, has been suffering from that sort of negative impact, doubly impact on lack of enrollments, lack of clarity for employers, and lack of funding that comes from normal obligations from the city and state.
Yeah, I guess obviously the pandemic has complicated everything. That you not only have to take stock in the existing, institution, but also think in terms of, recovering or whatever we want to call it, or getting to the new normal post-pandemic. I personally have hoped that the Biden administration is going to push through, these policies that could bring a lot of jobs, programs to the community colleges in particular, where we're set up. That used to be what we were.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've done any kind of research into LaGuardia itself. They used to call us the co-op college.
Yes, I
And
did.
that changed. But before the pandemic, I don't know if, I guess this was before the pandemic, and the pandemic just kind of, exacerbated that. I didn't know this. I mean, that adult continuing education had been one of the big fundraising pieces at the college.
Correct.
And we came to find out that actually been in the red in the last few years. I don't know if you looked at that.
Mhm.
And
I,
so go ahead.
so I mean, yeah.
See where I'm going.
No, I understand. No, totally, Hugo. Good question. So it was, in full disclosure, I was made aware of that before I did come to LaGuardia, and that was one of the other reasons it compelled me. I was, when I came to BMCC, I was also in a turnaround situation where I was made aware of there was also issues at that point 14 years ago, where we had to really dig in and turn around the division, and dig out of a negative deficit. And so when I accepted the position of LaGuardia, I was made well aware of, over the last few years, that they had, well established stores of reserves that were depleted over the years for a variety of reasons. In hindsight, I could understand why, but being here today, I think our goal is to kind of align programming with fundraising ability and with grant funding opportunities that are going to provide the impact to our communities and our students who need that, and not necessarily try to build everything off of tuition, which is an important part of the equation. Normally in adult continuing education, there are usually about three legs to the stool that supports it: normal tuition, allocations from state funding, FTEs, which CUNY is fortunate to get. Some states, they don't get that. And then either fundraising and or contract training in addition to grants. And I think nationally, the data shows community colleges have been in a decline prior to COVID, to be fair, because of demographic birth rates, the success of some four-year institutions lowering some of their standards, or more students being accepted into those institutions has put pressure on the community colleges and subsequently on the continuing ed divisions within those community colleges. And so that's been happening for the last 6 years or so nationwide, and LaGuardia is no different. It's been following that trend. There was a negative, kind of decline in enrollments and the use of reserves over that time frame.
Yep. It I think one of the things that well, there's a few things in adult continuing ed that over the years I've gotten to know. Obviously, the 10,000 small businesses, Goldman Sachs, which is a pretty amazing program, and Paisley, who I haven't seen in over a year. I hope to run into him again. Is great. Obviously, New York Designs, which since you haven't been, since obviously we're not around physically, but you would find out that my department is right next door to
Oh my goodness!
the offices on the 7th floor, as well as sharing the fabrication lab through our industrial design program. And then some of the other programs, TELC, English Language Learning Center, and which interestingly is a product. You're a New Yorker, so you were here in the Giuliani years when ESL stopped being a function of the high schools, where people could go to a high school after work, and that's the way my mother learned English. And so, programs like TELC have come along and absorbed that. How do you find these? I mean, did you have similar programs at BMCC of this?
So Hugo, yes and no. Yes and no. I'll say the TELC program is one that I've admired for many years. I mean, we've got at BMCC, we built up the largest CUNY Start, Math Start programs in CUNY and very successful. But TELC is so successful and so rich in its programming. It's got a reputation that extends well beyond LaGuardia and CUNY. So I was always admiring it, and I knew the program because it had not only those other pieces, but this larger ESL program. We had similar ones, but much smaller in that size. So I was very glad to come to LaGuardia and meet John Hunt, who has got a great reputation, who I've known also prior, and Liz Iannotti and the team in TELC. Certainly, they also suffered during this kind of impact from lack of enrollments, but we're on the ascending rise now, and hopefully we'll be able to pull out of that. But that's a wonderful program that we didn't have at BMCC. And certainly the Design Center, when it opened, I was invited to the opening, and I came to LaGuardia, and I was also aware when the 10,000 small businesses was awarded to LaGuardia. So these are very prominent New York City initiatives, and in some sense, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses is a national initiative. And so very impressive. And part of the kind of legacy, the rich legacy and heritage of LaGuardia that spans outside of New York and outside of CUNY. In fact, on the national boards I've been on, many people may not really know who CUNY was or is, but they knew who LaGuardia Community College was because of these type of large initiatives. So it means something when I say LaGuardia Community College to a group of people outside of New York, and they understand, what the institution stands for.
Okay. It's actually 12:28. I'm going to do a quick station break. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And my guest today is running the Adult and Continuing Education Division at LaGuardia Community College, Vice President Sunil Gupta. And I told you I wanted to kind of get into the second half hour by giving you an opportunity to talk about what you're working on right now. I mean, you did talk about your listening tour, and I don't know if you've already started developing a vision. Like, the president has his 5-point plan as far as a vision, but I want to give you a little opportunity to talk about that, the things you're working on, and some of the things you're thinking about for the division.
Oh, thanks, Hugo. Should I go to that now?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome, excellent. Okay, thanks for the cue. So I would say that I have my own framework that drives me in this area, and I'll share that framework. Sort of the vision and mission will be shaped by further feedback I get from the college community, so that it's really representative of what's needed here. But my framework primarily has been to look at a very simple thing, at a 3-point because if it's more than three, it's hard for me to remember myself, right? So it's much easier this way for me. So I look at student success as a key part of my framework, and particularly the definition of student success. And and the definition of student success for me is a contemporary definition, which goes beyond traditional persistence, enrollment, persistence, transfer, and completion. It's really about inquiring from the student what else do they need, and it's usually that four-letter word, the good one, work, that needs to come into that equation. After some point when they graduate, work is part of it. I mean, that's assumed that they're going to work, they're going to have a career, and that conversation should start early. And that's where continuing education can play a role in that career exploration, the opportunity to engage with adult or youth learners who don't know what their major is going to be, and to help them guide them into that pathway. So student success is my one part of the framework. The second item is community engagement. And when I say community engagement, it really means in the communities that we serve, how do we meet our students? We should meet them where they are, not where we want them to be on their remedial ES language skills, math skills. We have to reach them where they are, with their need, what their needs are, and provide valuable, meaningful impact to them and their families and their communities through providing services of programming that will help them. And that community engagement is a big part of the mission of a community college, and clearly a large part of LaGuardia's mission. And the third part of the framework for me is sustainability. There's no way in which we can provide these needed services to our communities and to the college community, the students, the faculty and staff, if we ourselves are not sustainable. And that comes through a framework of planning. And if you asked me about 15 months ago, I would have never seen COVID coming and the impact on the city. I was in my office at BMCC. My last day there was March 20th. And I had told my staff that, I think we'll be back in about 6 months. And that's the part of sustainability. I mean, planning to be able to carry on and provide service to the students and the communities in the face of some unforeseen challenges and some challenges that we're aware of. That there's going to be a decline in enrollment. What do we do? How do we provide services? How do we provide and maintain our staff at the same time being able to keep the division going forward? And so those are challenging things. They're not easy answers. And I use those three items to guide me as I move forward in what I do.
So, well, so the three areas, right, that you're pointing out here, what does that look like with feet on the ground, boots on the ground, so to speak?
Well, I would say with student success, I think that there are a tremendous amount of allies. I would say that from all the faculty I've met and the provost, that's clearly a primary aspect of all students and student affairs. I mean, student success is why we're here at the college. Just trying to find where we can be a meaningful partner in that equation, right? That algorithm of student success. It's not academic success, it's student success. And if you looked at the guided pathways models that came out of the American Association of Community Colleges, in which BMCC was part of the second cohort that was selected to be a part of it, we identified these career pathways that connected every major. We took about 81 majors and turned them into 8 academic and career communities. And each community had multiple pathways for non-credit to credit certifications, articulations, exams. And so I think for me, I believe that there's a lot of depth here. LaGuardia was one of the primary leaders in non-credit to credit articulations in CUNY. And I'm taking an inventory. I'm meeting with all the academic partners. And again, I'm trying not to rush it. I'm trying to meet with them and also listen, because they have their own concerns. They may have ideas where we would fit in.
Well, it's interesting because, again, the president was on the show a month ago or a few weeks ago. He's supposed to be on the show next week, by the way. We're trying to figure out if we booked him properly. And anyhow, just talking about, he was involved in that report, or he at least certainly had a piece in it, and talking about that measuring community college success is about students getting jobs.
Yeah.
All right. As opposed to where the college was heading in previously, which seemed to be the bigger focus was on transfer. And uh, being a faculty member, uh, I've learned some things over the years. Like one of the things is you go to graduation, because if you don't go to graduation, you don't ever feel like you're accomplishing anything. It's like you see there's new kids every semester, but do they ever go on?
Yeah.
And that used to be enough. This idea of getting them out of the door, right? ASAP's success is
Mhm.
getting kids out 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But I along the way, I started saying, like, I don't know if that's enough for me. I want to know what happens after they leave the door. And, are they going on to the next institution? Are they going to be able to find a job in the industry they chose? You can imagine in the arts what their chances are, right? Uh, are they going to be happy?
Right.
Growing. But there aren't a lot of faculty like me that are thinking this way necessarily. So when you go to faculty who have kind of been brought up in this idea of almost like we were a small liberal arts college that just so happens that they got out in 2 instead of 4 years. Now we're telling them, well, you got to see, you got to play a role in getting them a job. Uh, I don't know how they're going to respond to that. Can ACE help fill that void for us? Can
Well,
that
that
partnership?
I'm very grateful that as a faculty member, you kind of see that connection. I think that's wonderful, and I think going back to what I said before, I think that ACE is only a part of the equation. I mean, this is part of a meshed, networked system, a braided support mechanism, in which our students, if we know that only nationwide 20%, 22% complete from a community college over 5 years, uh, we've got to be able to provide these support mechanisms so that more students not only complete, but they actually can find themselves not with financial aid debt, or not unemployed, or back in an environment where 80%, 70% of our students who come in never complete. We've got to give them more than that, and I think that anything that accelerates their connection or increases their ability to connect to the college, which could be pathways from pre-college programming, academic programming, bridge programming, or workforce bridge programming that connects to the high schools, could have a very large impact. But by no means is ACE the solution. It's a part of the solution, and the academic faculty and the academic programs play as much as large a part as ACE would in this. So I think that there's a connection. I think we're all trying to do the same thing, but we just need to get there and have a kind of a set of level expectations of what we can do and how we can do this. And it never happens overnight. And it's usually a cultural change that happens over time. And people who are thought leaders like yourself will be part of that. And faculty do believe and want the best for their students. I mean, I believe it. I genuinely believe it, and I think that it's just a matter of how do we work together in this interesting point of time to provide our students with this opportunity. And what do the students want? Many students may come to college not sure what they want to pursue and may graduate with a 2-year associate's degree in something that requires them to get a 4-year degree and a transfer degree. But how will they support themselves, and how will they move on after that if they can't get a job while they're pursuing that 4-year degree?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk about the connection between ACE and bringing them into the for credit piece of it, like ACE being a farm system. I don't know if you're a baseball fan.
I'm a Mets fan. Does that count?
Of course. I used to, yeah. My father was a Mets fan. All right. My mother was a Yankee fan, so you can imagine what the house was like. But this idea that, again, we bring students into the campus, they're getting these certificates or education in practical,
Mhm.
job seeking roles, but that somehow we can also, and I've made this case too, that, once half the job was getting me into that photo lab and
Mhm.
putting me around, the environment, seeing
Mhm.
myself in the space. That was one of the ways to get me to the for credit. Uh, how do we strengthen that? How do we? You talked a lot about what you did with BMCC. You're talking now about reaching out, but how can we make it a genuine farm system? To bring, like you said, a very large population. I mean, the population of adult continuing education, as I understood it, is as large as the for credit population, is it not? So if we even get a, a portion of that in, we'd be increasing. We could make up for the 20% loss in enrollment, right?
I think over time, and I think the challenge. So getting more to like strategy and tactics, the challenge is for me to get my arms around the existing non-credit to credit articulations that are currently active and in place, and then identifying how they overlay with the job demand in the multiple sectors in New York City. The job demand is going to vary. You're going to have the short term job demand, which is going to be very deviant from the long term New York City traditional job demand of hospitality, tourism, which is now decimated, and more in line with allied health and technology. And over time, mid to long term, it'll kind of bend back the curve approach more of where we were going as a city, where the jobs were. So lay that over with the articulations and then find the gaps and then work with the faculty and funding sources, because it does cost money to develop curriculum. You cannot expect faculty to develop curriculum without time and ability to think and get feedback from the employers. And it's our job to bring industry, government agencies, and CBOs to the table to meet with the faculty in this kind of very fertile environment to design where there are opportunities of value to create these stackable credentials from non-credit to credit. There's also in New York City a big turning point with the CEO Job Council, which is being led by the previous president of LaGuardia, Dr. Gail Mello, and a variety of Fortune 100, 500 corporations who are putting large amounts of money on the table for LaGuardia students, CUNY students, to put them in these micro-credentialing programs. And this is a wonderful signal. Simultaneously, there are other initiatives in the city being funded by the Judy and Jamie Dimon Foundation, focused on workforce youth employment opportunities. In addition to that, there's the Educational Design Labs initiative that selected 6 large nationwide institutions. CUNY was one. LaGuardia is a part of that. And all of these things overlap. And we've got to find where there is a economy of scale there, and then work, because there's even though there is an economy of scale, there's no shortcut to time, and there's going to be some time that's required to plan, design, and build out these programs that don't exist yet and that are responsive to students. And then securing the funding, which I want to just thank the college and the president for his very large push towards a scholarship program that supports non-credit students who really would not be able to afford any of these training programs right now. So it is a large kind of short and long-term planning model in which we're engaged in.
We're almost moving into the last quarter hour, where we will take questions if folks want to type them into the stream chat. Dr. Riccio usually forwards them to me. I was listening to you, and I was thinking about, I was watching CNN this morning, and somebody talked about how we're in the eye of the storm. We're in the eye of a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
That's the pandemic. That was the analogy. Sure. Having grown up in South Florida, I know what that means. It means, that you come out and you think that the storm is over. It isn't. And you get the back end. And a lot of that has to do with folks still not taking the proper precautions before everyone's going to be vaccinated, and all of these different strains that are coming up as well. But I think about it economically in terms of, you mentioned it before, there seems to be jobs money coming down the pike. Are we ready to take advantage of it and to provide the training and pipeline? Also, the fact, when you were talking about industries, I was thinking about how there has been talk of both the financial and the tech industries moving to Florida, of all places.
Yeah.
And possibly abandoning us. I trust the city is going to come back. That we've been through worse over the years, but I think about us, LaGuardia, the institution, and so how do we adapt to the fallout from the storm? Are you thinking about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's if you ask me what keeps me up at night, that's one of those items that I go to go to bed pondering. And I'll say that there is some positive news. I mean, many corporations have made commitments to increasing hiring, particularly in New York City. A huge talent pool exists in New York City, and many corporations in technology and healthcare and business and finance have a lack of diversity. And that's it's no surprise. It's unfortunate. It's the way they are. But they made commitments. There's a CEO council that has made not the New York City CEO council, but a CEO council who pledged prior to COVID of increasing the number of talent and diversity recruitment in the country nationwide. So part of the strategy is identifying those partners and showing them the real talent that we have at LaGuardia. Our students are both credit and non-credit students, and in technology, it's one of those weird anomalous areas where credentials, individuals can get certified and trained and get some and secure some amazing entry level positions. It's still one of those outliers, and it's not the norm. But there does exist for people who are seeking an opportunity to lift themselves up to be a part of a funded or sponsored training program in cybersecurity and networking. The evergreen area of healthcare during COVID. I mean, the city relied heavily on these individuals who are EMTs, who are CNAs working in all different parts of the healthcare system in New York. The key component is that these programs in these training areas shouldn't be dead ends. They should connect to credit programs so that people can continue to move up that continuum and move further and higher up in so that they can raise their families in wage sustaining jobs. And it's a big complex challenge. But I think you take it one bite at a time and one step at a time, in which you see what we have and then you try to build out to where we need to be. And CUNY and the leadership of the college sees that vision, I believe, and is working to raise more money to support these initiatives.
It's interesting. I just wanted to say that whereas Dr. Riccio is telling me there are no questions, Dr. Sokolsky, one of my colleagues, is telling me that you have to sign up to Twitch in order to ask those questions. So I guess there's some folks are gun shy. One more thing to sign up for in the technology before we get out of this. So, but we are in the last quarter hour, and we've got a little about 8 minutes before I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Pope to take us out with a little more Sly and the Family Stone. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to, again, I mean, you've shared a lot about what you plan to do, but any other aspects of vision that you'd like to touch on while we have time?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly looking forward to when it's safe to be back fully, 5 days a week on the campus, and hopefully, when it's safe to, we'll see how we can outreach to all of the communities in Queens, right? In in our areas of community-based organizations, working with them to see if we can kind of create a network of leverage support. They may be funded for programming. We may be funded for some sort of programming. Together, you could create a wraparound support mechanism, and hopefully could also lead to accelerated engagement to enrollment, which I hope which is important for all of us. I mean, enrollment is a key component, and the data sets that I've seen CUNY-wide have shown that both Latinx and Black males are the most severe decline in enrollments for incoming freshmen. That's not a good sign. We've got to work together to identify what we can do to help our communities and get them engaged, whether it's through a workforce or again through a remedial program, whether it's something that's based through a grant-funded program, CUNY Start, Mad Start, CLIP, and engage them in pathways that lead to an associate's degree. At the end of the day, the associate's degree is critically important because that has shown statistically to raise individuals' lifetime income and family income. So along the way, the braided network of ACE continuing ed programs provide the support and the scaffolding. But the key component is they should lead to something that's aligned with an associate's degree at some point.
Yeah, it is. And I know President Adams has talked about this as well. Is that he came in the virtual experience. He hasn't, in many ways, he hasn't really met us, even though he's gone a lot out of his way to do it virtually like this, and we're doing this virtually. But I would look forward to the opportunity, to meet you. We share this. We're in the C building, so I would hope I'd run into you. Jane used to walk by all because they would have all their meetings in New York Designs. I could never get her ear. She was too busy. I'm guessing you are as well. But I'd like to walk around because the thing for me is I support the president's initiatives, his ideas, and I certainly support yours. And
Thank you.
I think the hardest thing is to figure out how to bring all of our thinking and efforts together. I have our own ideas, and I'm sure other departments and faculty have them as well. And it's the shadow, between the idea and the actuality.
Absolutely.
How do we make that work? And I hope you can bring some of your success with that aspect from BMCC here. Any thoughts about how you would engage faculty besides going through the channels? I mean, usually vice presidents talk to vice presidents or chairs. We rarely get an opportunity to faculty, let's say, to talk to vice presidents.
Right, and I agree. I mean, unfortunately, the COVID experience has left that organic kind of relationship building a little bit sterile. I mean, I would be invited if I'd meet with the chair, and sometimes they invite me to their meeting, with their departmental meeting, and I have a few minutes to talk about what we're doing, and then that would lead to relationships where there may be overlapping interests, in face-to-face environments. I'm starting to meet with the chairs, and I think that's the first step, and it's the appropriate step. And then the next step is to see where there may be some interest and alignment where we may be able to provide some value. Again, it is challenging in a COVID remote environment to build that natural human contact relationship. I would love to meet with you if you let me know a day you're on campus, even during COVID, we could safely meet.
Well, you may get your wish because I've volunteered for Hyperflex, whatever it's called, whatever, and so far it looks like I'll be trying to do it in at least 3 of my classes. So I'll certainly be on campus a couple of days a week come fall once I'm vaccinated.
That would be wonderful. I would love to grab a cup of coffee and maybe pick your brain a little bit and hear about some of the things that worked, some of the things that you thought about, and some things that maybe never materialized.
And maybe we'll also invite you to one of our what we call critical drinking, where we all get together after work and talk. But you'd be amazed, the kinds of things you talk about, in a relaxed setting.
Wow, is that a podcast title?
No, it could be, but I can't say I can't copyright it because I don't think it was I think that one came out of the Center for Teaching and Learning, believe it or not. We got a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. Any last words you want to say, or anybody you want to thank?
Well, I definitely want to thank all of the faculty that have welcomed me so warmly. I attended a faculty senate. I thought it was amazing, and I found the collegiality just phenomenal. I was just really impressed, and also again with the cabinet members, the leadership, and the staff members. I can't imagine how an institution of this size is doing so well with the level of communication during COVID. I've just been impressed, and even the podcasts, the radio broadcasts. It gives a lot of opportunities for a person like me. I'm familiar with LaGuardia, but being a new employee and 9 weeks in, and to really be connected and kind of feel the pulse of what's going on, it's highly unusual for any college to have this level of communication.
Yes. I'll be interested to see what we hold on to once we get back. But I just want to thank you for being on the show. And it was funny because I was going to send you an email before you had even started, and I was told by Dr. Riccio, program station manager, let him get here, let him get here first. And then, funny enough, I can't remember who it was, maybe from the president's office, that said you should interview VP Gupta. And so I guess it was fated. Uh, but welcome to the
Thank you.
college. Thank you for being on the show. And for those watching and listening, this is What's Going On. I was your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Word Radio, WLGR. And my guest today was the Vice President of the Division of Adult and Continuing Education, Sunil Gupta. Thank you. And thank you, Sunil.
Thank you, Hugo. Pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And Mr. Pope, please take us out as we came in with a little Sly and the Family Stone. Bye-bye.
Bye.